When we talk about Father's Day, it's such we just had Mother's Day, of course, and very similarly, when you have parents in your life, those are kind of your direct avenues towards learning, if you will. You think about it regardless of how you grew up, who your parent was, and things they might have gotten wrong and things they may have gotten right. You learn from your parents. You learn from their example. And sometimes we may have learned the wrong thing from our parents. And you think about how much influence a parent has on you, that a lot of things that we do today, even things that we may need to unlearn because, hey, our parents may have taken us places and they taught a certain way, or they did certain things, or, they believed certain things. And even when we find out, that might not have been quite right, or that might have been a little bit off, it take us a long time to unlearn it because it's attached to our parent. And it's like, well, I don't want to go against what my mama said. We might be 62 years old. We still don't want to go against what we were taught from our parents. It doesn't mean that's, bad, because right is right. And, sometimes we get things wrong. I've apologized to my kids many a time. I was wrong. I got to apologize. So it is what it is. But at the same time, there are certain things that can be influenced on that child because they're so impressionable. And regardless of, even if you go to a house to where the kid don't like the parent, because that happens, there's still an impact on that child. So just having the role of parent is going to impact the child whether you're there or not. If you're not there, it's going to impact them. If you are there, it's going to impact them. You can impact them negatively or positively. We have to make a choice of how we're going to do that. And so that's why these roles are so important. And when we talk about fathers, the difference is, how many of y'all ever struggled with buying a man a gift? They say it's really difficult to buy dad the perfect Father's Day gift. And I know my dad is real hard to buy for. And I was reading about it, and there's studies that's been done on it, actually, so it's not just me. But a lot of times with guys, with men, a lot of times you find out they either have already bought themselves everything they want, because when they want it, they go get it, right? You not into whatever they into to go buy it. You're like, I'm not into buying no weed whacker. Just don't seem like a good gift to get nobody. That might be what he want, but you're like, it just don't seem right, and then you wrap that up, it don't even look right. So, it's that. And then a lot of times they say a lot of the pickiness is due to men not knowing how to accept gifts, being uncomfortable in that role because they're used to caring for somebody else. So to present them with a gift makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable. And the main reason they feel uncomfortable is not that they don't like the gift, is they don't know how to respond to the getting of the gift. So after you say thank you, and your kids and your wife or your or whoever's sitting there still looking at you, okay, thank you again. It's so nice. Y'all so sweet. What else y'all want? Why y'all looking at me? It makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. Y'all want a little hug, So it puts them in an uncomfortable place because it's not often that a man is in that place. And that has a lot to do with the role of being a man. And a lot of that, some kind of way that, it's just the way a lot of men are. And so we have to make sure we're adjusting our thoughts to be able to accept that and be able to put ourselves in a situation to where you're a little bit vulnerable. And it's hard to use that word a lot of times when you're thinking, I'm supposed to exhibit strength and I'm supposed to, be solid. How can I be vulnerable? Well, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show that emotion of thank you and be receptive to that. But when we're looking at it, what does all this mean? It means a lot of times we have to make sure our example is strong, right? As a parent. This goes for anybody, mothers and fathers. And if you're in any role of leadership to a young person, because that can come from an uncle, it can come from someone who's in your church, it can come from anybody, because people influence children. I think about how many teachers have influenced my kids over the years. There's a lot of them, some of them in a negative way, right? But being in that role of respect, and I have to respect you, I have to look to you for an example. And if you set a bad one, that can have an impact. So when we look at certain biblical figures, I want to pick on one right now, which is Job. Now it says of Job, one man in the Bible who could not even need any gifts. He didn't need a gift at all, was Job. It said Job, he lived in this land that was really close to the Fertile Crescent, east of Canaan. And he said he was really blessed by God. He had 10 children. He had thousands of livestock. He had all these domesticated animals, and he was a very respected man. Let's go to Job 1. Read the first few verses here. Job 1. It says, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, 10 kids. And he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays, and they would invite their sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. So his riches made him a very respected man. He was like a sage, a wise man. You know, when you see somebody with a lot of things, you expect, well, they must have done some great things to get it. So if they've done some great things to get it, maybe I can learn from this individual. And then you see somebody with like Job, not only does he have all the riches, but his family's together. The brothers host feasts and invite their sisters. So it must have been a close-knit family, right? They still hanging out, they're adults. That must be pretty cool. So he must have taught them something right, and he's still involved in their lives. I need to learn something from this man. Yet, he was still not without sin. So he still went to God to commit himself, to think about the things that might have been done. So when we look at this, he was really still an example for his children to continue to follow. He never came out of the sight of God, and he allowed them to see him for who he was. Now, I know we know the full story of Job, but I want to focus on this one aspect of his life. Because when we look at how he was an example, that's very important. Even Paul in 1 Timothy 4 through 12, when he's talking to Timothy, he said, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for believers in speech, conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. You know, when we talk about being a father, it's really about being a good example for our kids. You know, when I think about mothers, a lot of times the mother is the one who's there a lot, right? And the kid, male or female, gets to see them a little bit more. You know, when they're hurt, who rubs your knee? Mama. When you need something, you know, food-wise, or who asks you the question, you're hungry, you're this, you're that. So your mother's kind of always there in your ear, so it only makes a sense that bond naturally grows. But a lot of times when we're talking about traditional, every family is different. You know, the father, he brings home the food. He brings home some money. You know, he keeps the lights on. You know, and like I say, traditional household is what we're talking about here. But still, that mindset still happens a lot of times. And so, even though he's providing, a lot of times emotionally, he may not be there to the same effect. May not ask you how you doing. May say you should be doing all right. Everything taken care of, you should be all right. But he may not connect on that level. May need to. So a lot comes from the example that he sets and how he influenced the child through that example. What kind of man is he? How does he treat his wife? How does he treat his kids? How does he treat those outside of the household? Is he the same outside as he is inside? All these things matter because the kid is watching. So when we look at somebody like Job, he sets an example not only through his walk, but through his prayer. through how he treats God and how he looks to God. When we look at how Job is, and we think about how he remained close to God, it's important that we take a lesson from that. Because a lot of times we can change on who we are on the outside of the house to who we are on the inside of the house. What we do makes a difference. If we are to be focused on God, we can help better focus our family on God. So when we make sure that we're doing what we need to do and being focused and paying attention, then God will readily be in that household. Because if we ignore God and only focus on him on Sunday, or when it's convenient, or when something is going on, what do we think the kids do? They do the same thing. And then kids grow up. They become adults. And they have questions of their own. And if the only thing that keeps them connected to God is the fact that you said so, that's weak. Because when they start to find out things for themselves, you said so, don't hold up that much. A lot of times people make bad decisions simply because mama, daddy, grandmama, whoever said so. Because when they go out and make their own decisions, they say, well, I got my own money. I got my own house. I don't have to do things just because they said so. But did you teach them why? Did you teach them how? Did you teach them, hey, this could happen if? Or did you just say no, and because they asked too many questions and you didn't feel like going down the road, you just, I said so, that's all they need to know. But sometimes it's because you don't really know. You done learned your lesson, but you don't know how to explain it. But sometimes that difficulty in explaining it is very good. Because if you think about it, how much impact does it have when you go to a class and you see the answer develop versus just giving the answer? If you solving a math problem and I say, okay, here's all these numbers, here's all these symbols, and here's the answer. Like, okay, that's right. So if I remember all that, then I know that's the answer. But what if I change a couple of them numbers? Well, that answer is different now. So I need to know how you got the formula to get the answer. So if you can show people how to work out their problems, and every time you come to a problem, they see one part of every equation that mom and daddy came through, one part of every equation was God. Now, they had a bunch of stuff going on, but kept being God. And the answer kept being the same, which was going back to God. So now they're seeing you work through the problem, not just give them an answer. So then that what happens. Now they can work out the problem themselves because they can apply the formula that you've given them. So you have to take that time. And it's not easy. I know it's not. I know it's difficult. Trust me, I got one kid who asks a lot of questions. I got one kid who talks a lot. And she always there in my ear. I already divided it. You already counted out one of them. Always asking questions, always talking, always got something to say, but always trying to work through something. And guess what? Sometimes you be like, okay, but let me go through this to help you get there. And once you get there, guess what? It locks in. But it's important that we do that because if you don't and dismiss it, they're going to find out the answer for somebody else. And I don't know if y'all have talked to some of your kids' friends. Some of them not that bright. Let's just be real. Because some of the stuff that they come up with and how they get there, you be like, who told you that? Oh, my friend such and such said that. What? Who told her that? Yeah, you look at their parents like, this what y'all doing? Right? Because now you influencing my kid. So you got to be the one because otherwise they're going to find another voice to come in and mess up everything that you're trying to put together. So you have to be careful. So when we look at Job, I want you to look at one particular verse. Job 1 and 5. It says, when a period of feasting had run its course, so they had a good time, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. These grown folks, these not babies. These are adults with families of their own, with homes of their own, who have parties of their own and invite their siblings and him to come over to enjoy this feast. And at the end of every feast, he would make arrangements for them to be purified. Now, I say that because I don't know what happened at these feasts that he felt the need to do this, but it must have been a good time. Early in the morning, he would burn a sacrifice for each one of them, thinking, perhaps, maybe, there's a chance, slightly, my children have sinned and cursed God in their heart. Maybe. This was Job's regular custom. Now, think about this. Now, this was a time when, of course, they had to do sacrifice. We don't have to do this today. But basically what we get out of this is he lifted up his kids before God on a regular basis. And they were involved in the process. They saw his relationship with God. They saw his example with God. They saw how he interacted with God. So they knew what his relationship was. He interceded on their behalf to God. Grown people with their own life, making their own money, doing their own thing. Now, if he was doing this then, I'm pretty sure when they were younger, he was doing things as well. He was setting an example for these young men and women on how to live a life with God. Now, how do we translate this? You know, how often do we talk to our kids about God? How often do they see your relationship with God? Can they touch it? Can they see it? Can they experience it? Because I want you to think about something. If nobody ever told you how to pray, how do you know how to pray? I don't know. Seems simple, don't it? You should pray. We'll tell people that in a heartbeat. It's grown people that don't know how to pray. We're never taught. He said, well, nobody's supposed to teach you how to pray. Jesus taught his disciples how to pray. He said, when you pray, you should pray like, and gave them a strong example of how to pray. And if he's our example, then guess what? People are going to come to us who've never read his words and say, how do I pray? Well, guess what? You have to teach people how to pray. Have they heard you bless your food out loud, or do you bow your heads and everybody just, okay, I guess this is what we do? How do they know God for themselves if they never see you live an example for God? We have to push a lasting legacy on our children. It's very important. We say it may be not important, but it is. When we look at making a difference, how do you make a difference? How do you make a difference at your home, at your job? Everywhere you go, you have the opportunity to make a difference. I don't know how many of y'all know this, but life is not long. It's short. We talk all the time. Every time you turn around, you pop up, just a little bit of time passed, and such is gone. And how many times the older you get do you have that feeling of, oh, they gone? Think back on just the last 10 years. The phone rang. You having a conversation with somebody. And you may not be close with the individual. You may have went to high school with them. You may have known them from your childhood. You may have worked with them. All types of relationships that you had. Family member. Such and such. How such and such doing? Oh, you know, they gone. Or such and such, they passed. Or a parent of one of your friends who you used to hang out with, they gone a little early. What? Miss such and such gone? Your mama's neighbor. What? And it never stops being surprising. You could be 103 years old. And next thing you know, somebody say, such and such gone. How'd they go? Well, they were 103, so that's part of it. But you still surprised because I was just over there. And I don't care if you saw them last year, 5 years ago, or yesterday. Your response is the same. I just saw them. And you put in your time. They look fine. I wonder what happened. Life happens. But your legacy keeps going. Now, I've been blessed to have a lot of people who left a lot of impact on me. Some of them are no longer here. But their legacy lives on. Their impact lives on. Their example lives on. When we say things like, they would have wanted it this way, that only comes if you knew the person and what they may have wanted. If I was in this situation, I used to call them all the time. Now, this shows you how much you know somebody. I used to talk to them a lot. So now I got a problem that I would call them with. You already know what they would tell you. If they were here, they would, because their legacy lives on. It's important that we influence our kids, those people around us, even adults. Why? Because your legacy will live on You don't have to die. I'm not wishing death on you. What I'm saying is, even if you're not around, your legacy will live on. My kids are getting older. They're going to go out. They're going to go to college. And if their college experience is anything like mine, they will be faced with a lot of different choices. And some of y'all who have gone on to school and get away from your parents, you kind of get a free ride for a little while. Because you're not all the way into adulthood because you got a little bit of supervision, but you out there where you ain't got all that supervision. You know, nobody telling you, what you doing out so late? You can stay out late as you want. You a phone call away. You can do whatever you want until you do a couple things that get back home that mess you up. So when you start school, it was cool. Everybody come in fast and free. And you have this big incoming class of freshmen. But I always noticed the sophomore class, the junior class, and the senior class was always less number than the freshman class. Because the freshman class, after that first semester, you lose a few. That second semester, you lose a lot. Over the summer, it just follows us. Where all them people go? Either they made some bad decisions, life happens. They either did so much during that freshman class that them grades didn't hold up, or they got a lot more baggage now than they had coming in the first time and they can't come back. And they always say the same thing if you run into them, oh, I'll be back. Even fewer of them make it back. Why? A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times because of the decisions that are made during that window. They got freedom. And man, what if I take the freedom rings off of your kids? How would they act? How would they act if you're not around? That is the hard part. Now, some people got a good dose of their kids during COVID. They would go up to the school and tell the teacher how wrong they are about little man and their daughter and tell them, nope, wouldn't even listen to what the teacher say. Just tell the teacher, no, not my baby, not my kid. I know you the one wrong. Don't you pick on my baby. He perfect. And then COVID happened. And they say, little man with you for the next 9 months. All you got to do is make sure he turn on his computer and pay attention. That's all he has to do. He ain't got to do nothing else. I'll do all the work. I'm just going to have to do it from home because we can't be around him. So if little man turn the computer on, I got him. Mama, all you got to do is make sure he stays still. Woo! Mama got a full dose. She downstairs in the kitchen. What you doing down here? Go in his room. Why you back to the teacher? Why your computer off? This man can't even turn his computer on to look at the teacher, much less. So now you're wondering, if you can't get up and do this and sit there and look straight, what are you doing at this school while I'm not around? Full dose of what your kid is like. Well, what that mean? Something is going on. Something is happening to where they feel they can break free because you're not around. We can all be good when somebody's watching. But when the eyes are off, are we good for the right reasons? I don't want my kids to do it for me because I'll run out. There's only so much of me to go around. I only got 2 eyes. I can't see them. So I always look. When you see people fussing at their kids in the grocery store, they're not fussing at their kid because of the kid. They fussing at the kid because y'all watching. Because otherwise, at home, the kid must be getting away with something if he feel he can do it here. That's the way I look at it, right? Because if I go in the grocery store and the kid is acting that bad and the mama fussing, I know she's not doing that all day long. Can't be happening. You can't. It'll wear you out. But it's embarrassing when you get your kid in public and they start acting that way. So we have to teach them at home so they'll act right when they get outside of home. We have to teach them early so they'll know what to do later. I don't want to raise good kids. I want to raise good adults. I don't want to raise perfect children. I want to raise great God-fearing adults. Because, see, when I raise a perfect kid, there's so many kids that I grew up with, and I'm like, man, what happened to them when they got older? World happened, and they were not prepared for the world. We got to prepare people for the world, because now my protection is no longer there. You have to depend on God's protection. But if you don't know God, how do you know his protection? How do you know how to pray? How do you know how to go before him when life stresses you out? Because, see, I'm of age now. I'll call my mom and ask her for advice. I'll call my dad and ask him for some input. But guess whose problem it is? It's mine. I can't go to my mama and be like, man, the job tripping. And she be like, I'll be up there later on today. And here come your mama. I know it ain't my baby. Well, your baby's tired. No, he ain't. Both of y'all got to get off here. Now, both of y'all sitting at Waffle House talking about your next move. It don't work that way. She can't save you. This is your job. That's your family. You have to know how to guide your family. You don't have a rescuer except for God anymore, but you have to know how to go for him. So let's look at this. When we look at the book of Joshua, I want you to turn in your Bibles to Joshua 3. We're going to jump over there in a minute. But when we look in the book of Joshua, we see the children of Israel have gone through their second Exodus. They spent the 4 years wandering in the wilderness. And during this wandering, they were well taken care of. They were sustained God's goodness and mercy, but he did not mean for them to wander forever. So now under Joshua's rule, he says, okay, it's time for y'all to move on into this land that I want you to go into. And they knew it was going to be hard. They were going to have to fight some battles. They were going to have to do some things that were tough. And the first obstacle that they faced was going across this large body of water called the Jordan River. Now, in Joshua 3:7-9, he established Joshua. The Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all of Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. So he heard the words, and then he dictated them to them. He didn't just say, hey, here's what y'all gonna do. He said, these are the words the Lord has given me to give to you. Now notice it says the children of Israel, just like your children. We have to use the words of the Lord to them. Here are the words the Lord has given me to give to you. Let's pray together. Let's seek him together. Let's go to him together. Now, what did he tell them? Let's go to Joshua 4. I want to read this because this is important. In chapter 4, we'll read the first 8. It says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua. Now I want y'all to know something. The Jordan River was about 15 feet deep, and the water was moving pretty good. He said when they get there, those waters are going to open up. The miracle happened when the Ark of the Covenant went forth about 3,000 feet in front of these children of Israel. And when they stepped into the water, those waters parted in two. So that was the miracle that happened at the Jordan River. And he says when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said some other things to Joshua. He said, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua had commanded them. They took the 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. So I want you to understand, these stones came from the middle of the river. You can't get a stone out of the bottom of a river that's moving and it's 15 feet deep without equipment, right? So it shows that, man, these are big old rocks. How y'all get these here? Daddy, where these come from? Now I can tell you about God, because now you see the signs. So it was for the next generation to see. It wasn't for them. They the ones who crossed. So they knew. They were there. Y'all remember when? You remember when the Lord parted them waters, we walked on cross? Yeah, I do. But what about your kids? They didn't know. They didn't see it. So now, guess what happened? You got this direct impact from God. God blessed you. And everybody saw it who was there. But now your kids from you are a little distance from that situation. The only connection they have to the miracle that God did in your life is you. But you don't say nothing. You don't show nothing. You don't do anything. You just thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. When the kid come around, what you thank God for? Oh, nothing that's just between me and God. He don't see anything. So now what he do? You try to figure out, how did this man who's so close to God, how did his children get so far from God? He didn't tell them anything. He didn't show them anything. So where are your stones? Where are your rocks? Where are the things that you have representing that God needs to see, so for the next generation, they can say, hey, oh, Pop got a good relationship with God. How you know? Because he told me. I know his testimony. See, we'll come up in here, I got a testimony. And you'll grab the microphone and share it to a bunch of people who you only see once a week. But the people who closest to you, it's their first time hearing it too. They should know your testimony in detail. They don't even know how you got saved. They don't even know why you love God so much. They don't even know what God means to you. Why? Because you ain't never said nothing. You ain't never showed them your stones. You need to show somebody the example that God has for you. God is trying to proclaim his message to the world. And you say, use me, God, to witness to the world. To go on here in the corners and share your message with a dying world. Because this dying world needs you, but your household dying too, and they don't know nothing about God because you ain't talking to them. You rushing out the door to go talk to some strangers, but nobody else get to see your relationship with God. So God said, put these stones here. So when they ask, you can tell them the story. So sometimes you need to put some breadcrumbs there for yourself. Give somebody something to ask a question about. Hey, Paw, what this mean? Oh, sit down. Let me tell you about that. What this is? Oh, let me tell you about that. And you don't have to wait till they 15 to 16. Start when they 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. When they're 27 years old. Why you read the Bible so much? Don't just say, well, it's good to read the Bible. You need to read yours too. I've been telling you to read the Bible. That's what you need to do to get for the Lord. They're like, oh, well, I ain't going to ask you nothing else about the Lord. You just want to fuss. No, tell them to sit down. I know it's confusing. And I know it may not look like it makes sense, but let me tell you how it makes sense to me. And I'm going to tell you, just start out with a few verses. Read them, come back, and let me know what you think, and let's talk about it. Wow, what an impact. Now here's a 27-year-old, wheels turning. Here's a 45-year-old, wheels turning. Why? Because you ain't just say, you need to go to church and you need to read your Bible. What that going to do? When you have a kid who's struggling in school, would you tell them you need to read the textbook? I'm confused. I read it. It ain't making sense. What you do? You get them a tutor. You go after class. You call the teacher. Do y'all have any extra credit or anything they can do to help unlock some of this information so they can get it? You look for all this. You don't just tell them you need to go to school. You need to read your book. They going to school. They're reading the book. It's still not becoming clear, so you look for things outside of it. You try to pair them up with somebody who's doing good in the class so that they can maybe learn from them. You don't just give them blanket statements, but we'll do that with God in a heartbeat. Just drag them to church, sit them down, and expect some mystical power to set up on them and make them good. You still being bad. You went to church on Sunday. Don't matter. They were probably bad at church. Amen. It takes you to influence and guide and impact these young people. All people, really. So when we talk about leaving a legacy, we have to make sure that we put something in place that they can rely on, that they can stand on. Because any other thing you get them, it's a lot of kids out here. It's a lot of parents that's trying to impart on their kids what they think of as success. Can be athletics, could be all these different programs that's out here. And I don't know how many are on social media, but it's a lot of kids on social media who I know parents in the background directing and talking and doing all. I was just looking at a story about this young athletic kid, daddy telling him everything to say, just to get him out there. And he's pretty good, but dad all involved in the kid's life from a social media aspect. Now, if y'all go back in time, when we grew up, right, when I grew up, it seems like there were a lot of kid stars on primetime TV, Think about Different Strokes and Facts of Life, and some of y'all kids don't know all these shows, but these were popular shows, right? There was a lot of children on TV. All of them, I used to be envious, right? I used to love to sit there and look at Different Strokes and see Arnold come in and what you talking about with us, and I'm like, oh man, that's cool. He's a superstar. I wouldn't mind being a superstar. But you didn't see all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes with these kids and their relationships. We see a lot of that now because a lot of people, they get pushed to be the breadwinner for the parent. And the parent don't look at them as a kid, they look at them as something different, right? And so when we look at that, that relationship becomes weird. And a lot of parents today, we put our kids out there a little too fast. We throw them out there, and I don't know if y'all ever been to a baseball game for Little League. RJ used to play. We played for years. Man, you had some parents in them stands, and they be saying some stuff. They'll be fussing at folks, and you be like, look, man, ain't nobody keeping records of who's winning this game. Don't nobody care that he almost made it and didn't make it, or if that was a strike or a ball, but man, daddy is on the field kicking dirt. They kick him off. The police got to come because he mad, because this the next Chipper Jones right here. No, he ain't that good. Not now, maybe, but he gonna need some time. But don't tell that dad that. But think about it. That daddy, and I knew some of these parents now, that daddy would go home. They had all the equipment you could think of. He had the latest and greatest stuff. They would practice. They put on videos. He took them to this person, that person, all for him to be the next great. But what about God? Did you take him to places to learn about God? The same way you taught him to work on his swing and to hold the bat and to grip the glove and to catch this way and to make sure you get under the ball and keep your eyes on it the whole time if you're in the outfield, and if you're on first base, your foot need to be here. That takes a lot of time to get there. When you slide in, don't slide this way, you'll hurt yourself. Slide that way. When you do this, when you catch that ball, make sure it's on the ground and the legs are open and it hit that mitt. Then when you come up, you got to be ready. Put that back foot here. You see all the meticulousness of this sport? That takes time to translate to a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old. They don't just get it the first time. But when it comes to God, yeah, go to church. But do you sit and meticulously go through and talk in detail? All you got to do is talk about your walk with God. Talk about what your experience with God is like. Let them see you pray. Let them see you read. Let them see you study. Make sure that they understand that you have a relationship with God. Why? Because it's going to help them to ask questions. What do you do when this happens? I saw when such and such happened, you prayed. Why you pray? How do I pray? Should I pray? And you ask them, do you pray? Do you go before God for yourself? No, I don't know how. Well, why not? Don't just tell them, well, you need to pray. You don't know what they're doing. Help them. The same way if you had the next Chipper Jones and you be like, ooh, man, this boy can hit. And you start seeing dollar signs. You start seeing fame and fortune. And that's okay. But what would you do? You would take him everywhere. Because if you had a 10-year-old and next thing you know, he knocked it out of the Braves Stadium, you're going to be sitting there like, okay, that's never been done before. Everybody going to see this kid. You're going to take the time to nurture that, right? Because something could happen. But do we do that with God? So where are your stones? Have you placed them in the right place so when they see those stones, they will know, Dad, Mom, what's that? Now you can have that conversation.